one of the greatest authors of American letters and quite possibly his signature short story. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for a short story discussion which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being the short story discussion playlist, well, three playlists, I suppose. Number two being a William Faulkner read-along series where we go short story by short story through the entire collection of William Faulkner short stories. And number three, the William Faulkner playlist here on the channel. This is a short story that is stunning in its clarity. This is a short story that is verbose in its exploration of the depth of the family dynamic. And there is an observation from William Faulkner in this short story that is breathtaking and heart-wrenching, which will appear in the Writer's Corner portion of this video. This video will have four separate sections: a So What Happened recap of the short story, a literary criticism section where we talk about the literary goings-on in the short story, a Writer's Corner portion of the video where we talk about those things that we might take from this short story as authors ourselves, and finally, a rare Adrian's Corner where there is something in this short story that I have to talk about because I think that it is outside the confines of the literary criticism section, outside the confines of the Writer's Corner section, and something that is sort of just a life observation in this short story. So, what happened? It's a courtroom drama. Our eyes are that of the son of the defendant named Sartoris. His father, Snopes, is accused of burning down a neighbor's barn over a dispute about a hog and some fencing. Mostly. The boy is called to the stand, but everything breaks down and the judge dismisses, telling Snopes that he would do best to leave town. Snopes replies that he has plans to do just that, and they do. They're already on their way to another plot of land to work. Once there, Snopes takes Sartoris to the landowner's house, tracking horse manure into the house and across a very expensive rug, seemingly on purpose. The lady of the house yells at them to leave, and later the rug is dropped off at the new Snopes house. They are told to clean it, but they ruin the rug in the process and noisily return it before daybreak. Despain, the landowner, tells him he'll have to work off the cost of the rug with 20 extra bushels of corn. Snopes takes him to court over it, saying that the price is too high. The judge rules that yes, the price is too high for someone in Snopes' position. He says 20 bushels of corn is too much, but Snopes can do 10. Acknowledging that Despain is still out $95. Then, in the middle of the night, Snopes starts gathering fuel, pushing his wife away as she protests. Sartoris begins to protest as well, so Snopes apprehends him and tells his mother to hold him. But he breaks away after Snopes set off on his next barn-burning venture, and Sartoris races to the manor house and bursts through the main doors screaming, "Barn! Barn!" waking the whole house. The men grab guns and race towards the barn as Sartoris wanders out into the night, where he hears the men shoot his father. Then he spends the night alone, walking into the woods and not looking back. The very first thing that I think is necessary to get out of the way here is we have a character name drop. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, this is one of the more heralded things about William Faulkner on the literary end, on the criticism end, in the academic world about William Faulkner. But one of the most aggravating and irritating things, if you were getting introduced to Faulkner or if you're taking Faulkner for a class, is this Yoknapatawpha County and the characters therein. Because what happened is William Faulkner dreamed up an entire county and populated it with characters from his head, and there are interrelations between most of, if not all, I'm not an expert on Faulkner, interrelations between characters in this world that if you're just being introduced to it, if you just have this story and no others, you're name dropping Colonel Sartoris. I don't know what that means. Colonel Sartoris is a former mayor of Yoknapatawpha, and he is heralded in great deal because of his fighting in the Civil War. That's where the Colonel part comes from. And he was the first in Yoknapatawpha County to raise a regiment for the Civil War. So we have here a character in this way being named Colonel Sartoris. The child becomes a symbol of Yoknapatawpha County as he travels with his father. As he travels with his family unit, that is this little portion of Yoknapatawpha County screaming, I am Yoknapatawpha. This is Yoknapatawpha. This family is Yoknapatawpha. We are Yoknapatawpha County. This is the people that are. This is the county that is. This is what that place means. So when people see this family, they will say to themselves in the very same way that in As I Lay Dying, when the Bundrins are on their great journey and they are on they're on horseback while other people are driving cars, everyone knows that's that backward place. That's Yoknapatawpha. That is what is going on there. And it's an interesting study with this case because we do have the emergence of a hero in Colonel Sartoris. And this is something that we will get to a little bit later in this portion of the video as well. But we have a hero rising from this situation, but we really do have a family that is the family is dysfunction, right? The family is sort of backwards. The family is very blood feud, as we will get to again a little bit later. But we have the tribalism of this family representing this place. And it's something that it's not unique to the American experience, really, because, I mean, Europe is so many different cultures so close together. Everywhere is so many different cultures so close together. But what we have is a family representing where it's from, regardless of everyone from where they're from would recognize them as that thing, right? I don't think people in Yoknapatawpha County say we're going to go represent ourselves. The same way that many other cultures, when they're so close together, they will represent themselves in other cultures. I think we have basically Yoknapatawpha County kind of like if you were to take a bed with bed bugs in it to a bed store. That is just infesting the rest of the store, right? A lot of the culture in this town is very negative. And you get that in all of Faulkner's stories. But that is where the name comes from. That is the importance of the name Colonel Sartoris. The next thing I want to talk about here a little bit is that we have in that courtroom scene, we have the boy talking to himself. And he says, he's hyping himself up to lie for his father. He's hyping himself up. He could not see the table where the justice sat before, which his father and his father's enemy, our enemy, he thought in that despair, ourn, mine and his'n both. He's my father. He's hyping himself up to adopt his father's relationships. He's internalizing those relationships. He's internalizing those blood feuds, and he is internalizing that tribalism. It's something that he will break with later, but he is trying very hard to talk himself into it at the beginning of this story. And he does it. He does talk himself into it. He just does not get the chance to act on it the way that he thinks he would, the way that he convinces himself that he would. Then we have a very interesting take. So this is the Bible from which we will be following along in this series. But we on page 7 of this copy, Almost a shrewd fire. Such fires were his father's habits and custom always. He's talking about while they're traveling, his father builds a fire. His father builds a fire for warmth for the family. This is a small fire, but it's a fire. Notice he keeps the small fires for his family, the raging ire fires, the raging hatred fires for other people. Almost a shrewd fire. Such fires were always his father's habit and custom always, even in freezing weather. Older, the boy might have remarked this and wondered why not a big one. Why should not a man who had not only seen the waste and extravagance of war, but who had it in his blood an inherent voracious prodigality, with material not his own, have burned everything in sight? Well, he did. And that's why you're in the situation you are now, Sartoris, because your father did burn everything in sight. A very small irony in this short story that is something Faulkner's very good at. His characters are very good at making observations. His characters are in the story, not meta. They're not above the level of the story. So a lot of the ironies that we get in Faulkner from time to time are ironies of observation or ironies of disobservation. Sartoris does not put it together in his head that his father does this, that his father does burn those big, bright fires with materials that are not his own, stolen materials. And that's why the family's in the situation they are. The story's called Barn Burning for the love of Sutpin. Now, moving on here. One of the observations that we get in this short story, but only if we're willing to do the work for it, because it doesn't happen on the page, is of the family unit. What are Sartoris's relationships with his brothers? What are Sartoris's relationships with his sisters? What are Sartoris's relationships with his mother? There's little snippets of relationship with his mother, but notice that in his relationships with his mother, he treats his mother the way that Snopes treats Sartoris's mother, Snopes' wife. Sartoris's only relationship is with his father. His father looms large over this entire family, over the entire situation, over their entire consciousness. Sartoris does not have a family. Sartoris has a father. Ironically, Sartoris kind of has a colonel in this way. He gets marching orders. The entire family gets marching orders from their father. No one questions him. They march, they build camp, and then they fight. Snopes is constantly causing fights and having to move along because of it. Now, the next thing, I'm going to skip number 5 and come back to it. Number 6 here, because of the end of the story, at the end of this story, we have Sartoris basically wandering off into the wilderness by himself. Before that, he has a lecture from his father. His father says, "You were going to turn on me, weren't you?" Pulls him aside and says, "You were going to turn on me, weren't you?" And Sartoris kind of knows he was going to. He wasn't planning on it. He certainly wasn't planning on it. He was planning on taking that blood feud through the beats of his little heart. But I think inside he knows he was not going to lie. He was planning on it, but maybe he knows he doesn't have it in him. And his father says, "Look, Turn your back on the family, buddy. What do you have? Turn your back on me. What do you have? Well, Daddy was right. At the end of this short story, Sartoris does turn his back on his father. Sartoris does get his father executed summarily. And then he is left to wander the wilderness by himself. He does not look back. He walks out into the woods and does not look back. Now, going back to number 5 there, nature versus nurture. Nature versus nurture is an age-old debate in philosophy, and because it's an age-old debate in philosophy, it has trickled its way into being an age-old debate in literature. Are we the way we are born? Is there something inherent in us, or are we molded as clay into the individual that that people will know by the people that we have known? That's a simple argument, right? The answer isn't easy, but the argument is. You pick one side, you pick the other side. What Faulkner is so good at doing is perverting it. What Faulkner is so good at doing, the way that the greatest authors are, is taking the argument itself and mixing it up. It's not oil and water, oil and vinegar, blood and water. It's not either of those. You mix it up. So, in this short story, we have the questions of nature versus nurture. Colonel Sartoris is a name which is uncorruptible. His father is a thief, which is nature. Your father is a thief, you become a thief. That's nature, right? You were born to that man. Or is it? Is that nature or is that nurture? Were you raised to be a thief? Is your father a thief because it is in his very being? Blood equals nature. Your family equals nature. And your family is full of thieves. Your family, in this short story, they're lowlifes. The name, is that nature or is that nurture? Is the name itself a nature, the way it is treated in this short story? The judge says to Sartoris, any boy with that name, I know he's going to get on this stand and he cannot tell a lie. That is sort of a Platonic ideal. That is saying you have inherited, by the nature of this name, those qualities. There is a Platonic ideal that is Sartoris. You are imbued with those natures. You can't lie. Or is the name nurture? So we have, in the course of this short story, the emergence of a hero, someone that Sartoris would have been recognized by everyone in that county, everyone in that country. Country not meaning United States country, country meaning the old-fashioned way of saying country, the parcel of land from which you hail. Everyone there would have recognized, like the judge did, that Sartoris, the name, was uncorruptible. So is Sartoris uncorruptible? Is Sartoris a hero in this way because he was imbued with the power of the name, breaking away from the blood, breaking away from the way he was raised? Or is this nurture? Because constantly, Sartoris, through the course of his life, has people telling him, you can't lie. And your family has nurtured you to be corrupt. Your family has nurtured you to be low life. Your family has nurtured you to be thief. Problem. Your family has nurtured you that way. But the Platonic ideal of Sartoris shines through. Or Is the thief part, the low life part, the problem part, the blood part? Is that the nature part? He was born to be a low life, but the nurturing of people constantly telling him that he cannot be a low life because of that name. You have to live up to that name. You do not have a choice. You carry those letters to define you. You carry those letters to be by which to be recognized. Which one becomes nature? Which one becomes nurture? That is the graying of this argument. That's the graying of this argument that makes the short story from a master, right? If it were simple, it could be good, and it could be good from it could be good, and it could be from a good writer. But the fact that it's so gray, the fact that it's so messy in the middle, that's what makes it from a master, because we can't really pull one thread from this cloth, the cloth of this story, and not mess up the entire thing. We are left trying to dissuade ourselves from the arguments that we're making in the meantime. Now, one thing that I will strongly encourage all writers to do with William Faulkner is this: cherish William Faulkner. You don't have to write like William Faulkner. In fact, William Faulkner's style of writing is not my favorite. My favorite style of writing is Ernest Hemingway's style of writing, minimalist. William Faulkner is sort of a maximalist. And in maximalist writing, you will always have, if you were in the hands of a competent writer, and here we are in the hands of a master, brilliant descriptions. And that's exactly what we have in this short story from William Faulkner. If you're in the same book that I am, this happens on page 4, very close to the beginning of this short story. The boy, and crouching small for his age, small and wiry like his father, in patched and faded jeans, even too small for him, with straight uncombed brown hair and eyes gray and wild as storm scud. He saw the men between himself and the table part, and become a lane of grim faces, at the end of which he saw the justice, a shabby, collarless, graying man in spectacles, beckoning him. He felt no floor under his bare feet. He seemed to walk beneath the palpable weight of the grim turning faces. His father, stiff in his black Sunday coat, dawned not for the trial, but for the moving, and did not even look at him. He aims for me to lie, he thought again, with that look, with that frantic grief and despair, and I will have to do it. Brilliant description from William Faulkner. We have so many things here that tell us not just about the moment, but about the characters. We have the description of the boy, small even for his age, wearing these small jeans even for him. This tells us probably his stock is malnourished, because his father himself is the same small and wiry type. We have the painting of his father in the stiff black jacket. This does not, and we're told it's not for the courtroom, it's for the move, but it's all we have of his father. So the only thing we know about his father is he is in the black coat, the cowboy in black. That's not the good guy, right? We have so many things. The parting of the people, looking back at him, you feel that moment. Hemingway wouldn't give us that. Hemingway wouldn't make us diminutive with that character. He would show it. He wouldn't make us feel it. We would have to intuit it. Hemingway would give us enough detail to know what was going on. But here we are, Sartoris. You have the description of the justice, a shabby, collarless, graying man in spectacles. Now, we know what a justice is. So this description of the justice in this way, shabby, collarless, this does not tell us everything about the justice. This tells us about where they are. Even the justice is shabby. Even the justice is sort of broken. Even the justice himself, he's got the money for the spectacles, but he's still shabby. This tells us about the environment. This tells us about Yoknapatawpha County. This tells us about so much more than just the justice. You have the turn at the end, which are his internal thoughts. He aims for me to lie. He aims for me to lie. And I will have to do it. There, we get a little bit of taste of who Sartoris is. He doesn't want to have to lie. All of these things are explained to us without an explanation. Not in ideas, but things. Do not tell us that Sartoris is a stand-up character. Make him stand up. But don't make him stand up. Just let us know that he wants to. He's too weak for that in this moment. The small boy in those comically small clothes, no shoes on his feet. He does not have the courage, but he will. After this, on page 5 of this short story, his father turned, and he followed the stiff black coat, the wiry figure walking a little stiffly from where a Confederate provost man's musket ball had taken him in the heel on a stolen horse 30 years ago. This is the author telling you. No. This is the author telling you. We know there that this is not a simple lie that Sartoris was going to have to tell. We know that his father's a bad man there. He was stealing horses in the war. He was out for booty. He was out for bounty. He was out for all of those darker things. Now, the next thing that I have written there, or typed, I guess, Faulkner is great at forging statues from wretches. You don't get that completely from this short story, though I think you could. In Absalom, Thomas Sutpin is an absolute wretch, but he is an absolute force of nature. I made jokingly in the read-along series for Absalom on this channel some observations about Thomas Sutpin that he was to be admired. I still get comments telling me that I'm a piece of garbage for saying those things. Ance Bundren is the same way, a wretch that is the head of his family and is absolutely unmovable by anyone else in his family. And I will not tell you whether or not he wins the day for the sake of not having spoilers for another story in this story. There is a read-along for As I Lay Dying on this channel as well. But the character that is Ance Bundren is way smarter than we would have ever figured. Conniving, but smart. Snopes is somewhere in between those two. Thomas Sutpin was an incredibly industrious person. Ance Bundren, I said Thomas Sutpin and Ance Bundren, yeah. Ance Bundren is a very underhanded and conniving person. Snopes is kind of like the son of the two of them. Very industrious. He's always moving around. He's always got a job ready to go for him. But he is a wretch nonetheless and underhanded in it. Thomas Sutpin, I don't think, is so underhanded. Thomas Sutpin is more the overhanded type. Thomas Sutpin, Ance Bundren would sucker punch you if he needed to win the fight. Thomas Sutpen is headbutting you, right? This character's somewhere in between. He's going to make eye contact with you while he sucker punches you. That is Snopes in this story. Now, the absolute most heart-wrenching thing here is something that I think fits better into the writer's corner portion than the literary criticism section of this video, but we have incredible... I'm just going to go into it. Stick with me for a moment because this is going to become more obvious as we go here. But we have, at the very beginning of this short story, from the boy, from Sartoris himself. He's talking himself into lying, and he says that he's going to have to lie to his father's enemy. And then he says to himself, our enemy. Ourn, mine and his'n both. He's my father. We get that from the boy's internal dialogue. Very shortly after, we get something fairly similar. This is something we just read. He aims for me to lie, and I will have to do it. He has these very intricate struggles within himself. He's very complex. He's very deep thinking. He's very nuanced. He is a complicated character, Sartoris is. But we have out of his mouth, his father asks him, answer me. Yes, he whispers. Yes, he whispers. Then we have on the very next page, his mother is speaking to him saying, come with, or his father is speaking to me and he says, come with me. And he answers, me? One word. Yes. Me? Then, the very end of the short story, he has run off. This is his ascension to being a hero. And as he breaks into the house, barn. That's what he says. Barn. Single word. Barn. What? The white man said. Barn? Yes, the boy cried. Barn. So we have a dichotomy between his thoughts and his speech. Very complex thoughts, very simple speech. The boy is complicated, the boy is complex, but he does not speak that way because he is crushed by fear. When he's talking to his mother as opposed to his father, as opposed to strangers, as opposed to other grown men, he talks to his mother in aggressive tones, but still fairly simple dialogue. Leave me alone, he tells her. Leave me alone, he says. He does not tell her all of the complexity that is in his mind. He does not bestow upon her all of the philosophy that is coursing through his thoughts. He does not say, but mother, we are a complex family. I have to lie for my father because he is my father. He is my blood, and without him, I have no one. He says, leave me alone. The boy's crushed. We don't get Faulkner telling us that. Faulkner shows us. Faulkner gives us this boy who is very complex, who has very intricate thoughts. But when he opens his mouth, it is very simple. He is not able to squeeze the thoughts in his mouth through the opening in his small face. He can't do it. He's crushed by fear. He's crushed by circumstance. He's malnourished. His father stops and gets the family crackers and cheese. They don't have a meal. They have crackers and cheese on their way to do more bad doings, on their way to ruin more stuff. And he answers in these simplistic fashions. He might be the most complex character in the short story, right? He might be the most deep thinking character in the short story. We don't get insights into any of the other characters. I think that there could be a short story for every character in this short story from this short story. If we got this short story from his brother's perspective, from his mother's perspective, they would all be worlds different than the short story that we get from the perspective of Sartoris. But Sartoris is complicated. He simply cannot answer that way. That is a stunning and heart-wrenching observation that is given to us, that is shown to us by William Faulkner without being told to us. The Adrian's Corner portion of this video is perhaps simplistic and something really that I would like to open up to discussion, because perhaps I'm wrong, but I think based on life experience that Snopes' character is indicative of his socioeconomic status, and let me explain why. I am from the working class. I have always been in the working class. Well, not always. Sometimes I've been below the working class. Sometimes I've been in the lower classes of society, the dredges of society. And look, anyone from the station knows this guy. Snopes is apparently capable, very capable. He's always able to find work. He's always able to find employment. He's always able to find employment before he has to have it. He leaves the courtroom at the beginning of this story going to his new job. Whether he found this by word of mouth, whether he found this by his reputation as a worker, that much we don't know really, but he's able to find it. He's able to do the work. He's very capable with his hands, and he's always ruining things for himself. Everyone knows this guy, someone who's capable, but who will obviously sabotage himself, and if he is connected to a family, obviously sabotage his entire family. It doesn't matter to him. He is self-destructive. He is family unit destructive. And he is within that family unit an absolute force. No one really questions him. His wife protests a little bit, but she could have protested the entire time, right? No, I'm not making excuses for the way that he treats his wife. I'm just saying that it is evident that he's going to act that way before he ever acts that way. You can tell that by the way that Sartoris, who goes by his middle name, a very southern thing, by the way, he spots the horse manure before his father steps in it. We are seeing this story through the eyes of Sartoris. Sartoris observes the horse manure before his father steps in it. He knows and notes that his father could have avoided that horse manure. He does not. He knows before they even go into that house to ruin the rug that his father's going to do this. His father is constantly making problems for himself. Now, here is why I have offered the observation that perhaps this is indicative of a socioeconomic class. For a socioeconomic class above this, I don't know that you stay in that socioeconomic class. If you ruin this many things for yourself and for the people willing to vouch for you, for the people who are in to have a deal with you, right? So I think that this is, in this case, a job that he has ruined for himself. I don't think it has to be. I think that he would sabotage relationships and friendships in this very same way. And if you know these guys always ruin these things for themselves. Relationships, job opportunities, their own car. We have the observation from, well, I guess not everything is from Sartoris' point of view, because the authorial voice comes through and tells us that future generations of this family will ruin their cars the same way that that Snopes is ruining his own livestock by treating them so harshly. So the question I kind of have is, do these people exist in the upper rungs of society? And if they do, are they simply not falling out of those rungs of society because there are so many more opportunities in higher class positions to screw things up? There's more slack in that part of society. I think that this is kind of the entire point of the story, isn't it? Almost the entire point of the story, other than the nature versus nurture kind of lean, is to look at this character and just observe him. Just to observe this character. To say, hey, what's going on here? We have a diagnosis here from Faulkner as the author, but we don't have a remedy. We don't have the fix. We don't have redemption for that character. Simply the raw and naked observation that these people exist.